I've talked about Rocktool a fair amount in the past. I've gone on and on about how good the Rocktool Gen R is, and then there was the half tool, the Gen R Lite, which both of those are very nice. And now we have another release from Rocktool. It's been around for a little bit, but this is the first time I have personally held this in my hand. This is the Rocktool SK5 VG. Now there are some upgrades and improvements to the Rocktool. This is a Leatherman Surge clone, but it is upgraded from some of the other ones, and so that's why it makes this a little bit extra special today. I do think this is probably Rocktool's one of their better superstar tools, and that's why this is important for you guys to see this today. Now, right off the bat, we notice usually I leave this to the end, but I know a lot of people have gotten frustrated at Leatherman for not including a bit kit in a pouch. So Rocktool definitely gives you a bunch of options. You have hex drivers, you've got star bits or security Torx bits, you've got flat drivers, these special drivers right here, all kinds of things. And then on this side, you've got some long saw blades that will not close in the tool, but they'll fit in the T-shank adapter. So these fit on the side, and then this fits in the front. And then you have some extra cutters, or these are the wire cutters. Now these do not fit Leatherman cutters, so you can't, these are not a direct replacement like Decoyu has some that are, but a lot of these cutters, if you have some random multi-tool from overseas that has replaceable cutters, a lot of times these are basically, interchangeable in most of my tools. Not everyone, I don't think, but a lot of them. So we've got the snap enclosure, it sits in there, and then this one is a little bit nicer in that it has this snap. A lot of these pouches had almost like a plastic clip that would get stuck in your belt and you couldn't hardly get it off. So I do like this pouch a little bit better. Now, one of the first things you'll notice about this tool is perhaps the texture or the coloring of the handles. And I like this almost this antiqued, not really titanium, but this antique feel of the black handles. So they're not just black, but they have a different look about them that I actually really like. Almost like brushed, I guess you would say, like black brushed. And then right here we have these really great, this really great plier head, the replaceable cutters, the crimper at the bottom, and out of the box these are so loose. That is one of the things that I love about these off-brand tools. They do not have the same issue that Leatherman does with being very stiff. So the outside is really cool. Now I did want to bring in the day camping, the DL30. I have bought several of these from AliExpress. And if you do want a pocket clip, I know a lot of people don't like pocket clips, especially for these heavy tools. If you do, you can get a Night Eyes pocket clip, and either Night Eyes or there's a company that makes the same adhesive clip, but they have several different colors, and I think they come in silver, black, and gold. So black would actually fit really nice with this, and I might actually do that in the future, buy a black clip to fit onto this, and that would be a little bit more streamlined than the whole pouch. All right, now let's talk about the exterior tools. I'm really curious about the scissors because a lot of times when the tools are black, the scissors do not work as well. Now on this side, we have the serrated blade. All these tools should lock. These are locking tools. And then on this side, we have the T-shank adapter. This is the only tool on the outside, I think, or the inside that is silver. This is pretty simple to use. You just put that back right there, and then you move that over like that. So pretty cool. Then on this side, this is one of the big news, one of the big upgrades. There is a VG10 blade on here. I think for most people, VG10 should do just fine. So that's really cool that they have upgraded that material. Instead of 3CR or 5CR, you now have the VG10 blade. Now on this side, we've got the scissors, and these right here, a lot of times this is a sticking point when they upgrade these. So let's go ahead and test these out. All right, so I've got my testing platform, and one of the first things I'll do is cut this paracord. I know not everyone cuts paracord, but I do feel like this is a sort of a universal test that we can gauge each scissor against each other. And this is very similar to some of the other scissors I found. Down near the pivot, it cuts actually through the paracord very well. So it does make very thin slices through this plastic. That's good to see. And then I know some of you have talked about zip ties. Yeah, it cuts right through zip ties. That's pretty cool. So I've got a couple more tests. Let's go ahead and try this rubber inner tube. It does slice right through that. Let's try seat belt right here. Now the seat belt, I've tested so many scissors lately that this seat belt is getting a little short. Hopefully you can see that. All right, so it is cutting through the seat belt, not quite as slicey as some, but yeah. So it is cutting through the seat belt. There we go, finally got to the end. That was a little bit more difficult to cut through the seat belt. Let's see how it does through the toe strap right here. So this is pretty thick material. It is seeming to get bound up a little bit on this right here. All right, I think there's oil on these scissors, and I think a lot of the fibers are getting caught in the pivot actually, which is a little different. So with that oil on there, it's getting some fibers stuck in the pivot. Let's go ahead and try this again. And yeah, almost, but not really so much. Now I know it has a serrated blade, so a lot of people might say, well, I just use a serrated blade with that, which makes total sense. Now, since I have cut all the others, it does seem like it's lost a little bit of its sharpness with the paracord. I do think these scissors will struggle a little bit more because they've got that extra coating on it. I don't know exactly why, but with that coating, I've noticed that most multi-tools overseas do not cut as well as the silver ones. So while I really love, there we go. So there on the tip, it actually worked really well. So you've got to find the right spot, I guess, where to cut with these. All right, so we've done the test on the outside scissors and we've looked at the outside tools. Now we have the double-sided bit driver, and this is a very nice tool right here. And there's the unlocking tab on the back. And then on this side, we'll have the awl with the eyelet, the very large screwdriver, the smaller screwdriver, the wire stripper, and the can opener. Now all these, or most of these, have a fair amount of oil on them. And then there is the ruler on the inside of the handle. These don't seem to be necessarily engraved on the handle. They might eventually scratch off. So that's one negative about it. I don't really see any indentation. But for the moment, you have a ruler right there. Now, how does this stack up against some of the other tools that we've talked about, like the day camping or the Byberry? Well, there's a couple things that are different. First of all, the price. You can buy Byberry, I think, on sale for about $36. The Leatherman Surge clone, and a Rocktool, I think it came in about $52, $56 with tax, something like that. That was on sale. Sometimes it's a little bit more expensive, but then keep in mind it does have the VG10 blade. So for those of you very interested in that blade, that is something that is very cool to have added. Now, the other thing that I like about this Rocktool is definitely the outside. I like this almost like the brushed black titanium texture, which I think is one of the nicest, actually, of any Leatherman Surge clone I've seen, at least that has these cutouts. So when I open this tool, one of the other things I notice is it seems a little bit smoother, or when I shut it rather, it seems a little bit smoother than some of the other tools. I feel like Rocktool is trying to up their quality a little bit. And even though these tools are probably all made in the same factory, I wonder if Rocktool pays an extra 5 minutes to have these assembled a little bit better. I guess we can at least hope. I'm not sure, but we can at least hope. Now, with Rocktool, they do send this information packet. There's one thing that's very important in this. Now, it tells you how to open the multi-tool. It tells you all about the functions, about the pliers, the wire cutters, crimping pliers, the lock, the rollers, the screwdrivers, screwdriver socket, or I call that a nut driver, the lock, the file, the knife, scissors, serrated knife, can and bottle opener, wire stripper, the screwdrivers, and the awl. But the big thing is right here under warranty. Now, they say here with this that you have a 5-year warranty. Now, if you remember in another video, I said that Amazon offers, I think for an extra $8, 3 years to warranty the tool, and then Rocktool itself says they will give you another, or not another, but 5-year warranty. So I think all those are very good positives for this tool. I think it's a really cool tool, and it holds, or it offers rather, a lot of value. Now, Workos sent me their TS27. This is a light that reminds me of the older mag lights that the police officers used to use. So there's a little bit of a nostalgia involved as I look at this light, because it reminds me a lot of, the flashlights around when I grew up. But this has a lot of functions up its sleeve. It does a ton of different things, and it is very useful for different situations. Now, one of the things I want to talk about is that it has a white light and it has a side light, and it's not just the output, but it's that on high 750 lumens, it can run for 280 minutes. On the low 3 lumen setting, it can run for 300 hours. All right, so let's go ahead and look at the back of this before we go into all the functions. Let's go ahead and undo this right here. And inside we have a gigantic battery right there. And this slides in like so. Almost, again, reminds me of those D-cell batteries. Some of you guys know what I mean. Some of you probably have never hardly seen those in your life. All right, now this functions right here with a front light, and then you can go ahead and it actually has a light right here. Now, I think this light would be very useful for camping, whether you set it almost like up like this, like a table light, or down like this, like a work light, or not a work light, but a camping light right there. In a tent. All right, so when we look at the functions of this light, there's 3 main functions. That will be the RGB function, and then there will be the flashlight right here, and then there is this side light. Here is the charging port on this side, and then also it does come with a charging cord and a lanyard strap. Let's go ahead, close this up, and then let's switch this to the flashlight. Now, when we go to the flashlight mode, it's not just a simple on and off. You can turn it on, and then mine comes on like the low, and then I can just hold it in and it gradually gets brighter and brighter and brighter. Very bright. Now I can turn it off. There it is, very bright setting. I'm holding this button in, and then it gradually gets to the moonlight or the very low setting again. Now, when I have this off, I can do 2 clicks, and there it is on the turbo. I can do 2 clicks and it goes back to low, and then 1 click goes to where I guess I had it set before. Now, if I do 3 clicks, 1, 2, 3, then we have the strobe light. 1 click goes back to the original light. So you have a lot of variety, even just in the flashlight. One of the things I need to mention is that with 4 clicks, you can either lock or unlock this flashlight so you don't accidentally hit it, and then it hits you right in the eyes on turbo mode. All right, so with the side light, you can click it once, and then for me, it's coming on at a low setting. And then if I click and I hold it in, it can get very, very bright, extremely bright right there. And then I can click it again, click it off, it comes on very bright again. Then I hold it in, and then you just keep holding it, and then you're back down to that low setting. Now, if you really want to, from the off position, if you have to have a ton of light, then you can go ahead and triple click it and you have the turbo mode, which again is extremely bright. And then you can go ahead and turn that off. Now from the turbo mode, you can do a couple clicks, 2 clicks, and then it does go down to the low setting from the turbo mode. Now, perhaps the most confusing setting of all is this RGB setting. So we'll go ahead and we'll turn this on, and you can see that we have a color right there. You can just press and hold this and it will go through different colors right there. Yeah, so right now we're at green, and then now we're almost like out of blue. We're back to blue. Now we're almost like at pink and red and yellow and green. And then eventually we'll be back to that blue setting right there. Then we can turn this off. Now there is a whole bunch of other things that you can do on this setting. It gets a little bit overwhelming for me. So if you do 2 clicks, you can have the flashing. And then if from this setting, if you do 2 to 3 clicks, now we have what I guess is the police flashing. And then 2 more clicks, we have the RGB gradient meteor shower, for whoever knows that. Let me know, what would you guys use these settings for? I'm really curious, like, who asked for these settings? So here's the multicolor flowing light. And then here's the 7-color gradient breathing, whatever that means. So yeah, it's a little different. And then we click it again, and there's a 7 gradient dissolve. Click it again. There's a multicolor celebration disc or blast. And then here's the RGB gradient vortex right there. So yeah, you can just, it's a really fidget function, I guess. But to me, it's a little bit overwhelming and a little bit too much, especially on the RGB side. Now, my favorite thing about this light is definitely this light at the bottom. I can see where in the wintertime, when perhaps an ice storm has come by and there's no power in the house, this will come in extremely useful. So I definitely want to keep this in hand as a home preparedness, like as part of my home preparedness kit, I guess you could say. I think that's really good even to take camping in an RV. Yeah, this is very useful. Even outside, like on the patio, I could see where this would be useful. It's got a lot of functions. I like how long the flashlight lasts. So on turbo, it can be 3,200 lumens to 1,300 lumens. And then it can run from 7 minutes to 3.6 hours, I guess, on the 1,300 lumens. That's very bright, very long. And then the static RGB can go for 60 hours. That would give me a headache probably. The low can go for, at 3 lumens, 300 hours. And then the high, 1,100 lumens to 750 lumens, can go for that 15 minutes to 4.6 hours. Now, Workos has the TS27 listed on their website for around $65, which, considering how valuable this could be in a winter storm, I think that's not really that bad of a price. $65 for a flashlight that can, at least on a low setting, last 300 hours. That's pretty good. And it does have this lantern capability and then some of the other functions as well. Let me know what you think, and thanks again to Workos for sending this to the channel.